Hi, my name is Dr. Stacy Betancourt, and I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Making Sense with Dr. Stacy. I'm continuing our short little series on balance and being able to find your center. Now, what I'm directing this to is in relationships, not only in external relationship with someone else, but also your relationship with yourself, which is not something we always think about. But in actuality, in order for you to have balance throughout your life, you need to know what your center is. What is your grounding in essence? And yes, that's a lot of imagery in conversation. But what it barrels down to is your belief systems, what you're willing to accept, what you're not willing to accept, what you want from the people around you. What do you do when you're with people who do not contribute to your center? Because when you get caught up in relationships with people that are not in alignment with yourself, you are actually compromising yourself. And that is not something that I ever recommend. You've got to be truly central within yourself, understanding your goals, your values, your beliefs, your feelings, your opinions. All of that matters. All of that matters. Now, you can make concessions in short term, but in long term, when you begin to make too many concessions, you start to compromise who you are, and that's never good. So this is going a little bit off of what I want to go to, and again, this is such a deep conversation. But what I want you to do is to look at your idea of balance in marriage or balance in divorce. In a marriage, if there is a spouse who continues to take more and more of your time, your beliefs, your practices, your behaviors, if they are taking more away from you than they are contributing, that's a huge warning sign. And that's something that you might want to reconsider, or at least get some help in processing how to regain yourself. Because in anything, if you begin to lose yourself, gaining yourself back is a very difficult practice, and one that definitely requires help. But in this case, what I'm looking at is learning to see the warning signs before that happens. If you are giving more, for example, if your spouse is not willing to help with things around the house or simple tasks, while you're working and doing and doing and doing, and you look over and they're on their phone, or they're zoned out, or they're in front of the television, if they're doing all these things that take away from the relationship, you have to begin to ask yourself, is this relationship worth staying into? And before you get there is, can this be fixed? And that takes communication. And the key element to any relationship is being able to speak your mind honestly. Now, sometimes that's going to come out very strongly because it's something you firmly believe in. And you have to understand that the person receiving the information may not be ready to hear those things, but it's still important to say them. It's still important to let that person know where you come from and where your belief system is and where your center of understanding, where your center of compassion is coming from. Now, you can't always expect that you're going to be met with a positive reply, because sometimes this will be coming very shockingly out of an area where they would never expect. But it's still important to voice your feelings. And then you have to understand that you've got to then back off and let them process it, because that could be one of the most detrimental points, is if they're not ready to hear what you need to say, then you have to be willing to accept what happens. And if that ever backs up on you, I can help you through that. I can help you so that you don't harness feelings of guilt. You should never feel guilty for speaking your mind. And sometimes that has to come out in a very firm, honest, open way. Whether the person's ready to hear it or not, you can't control that. So if you are ever in a situation like that and it backs up on you, let me know. I can help you through that because you shouldn't feel guilty. Now, there is a line between cruelty and being assertive. And that's a tough one because your interpretation of those feelings may be different than someone else. And at the end of the day, if you don't get what you're looking for, then you really need to question whether that relationship is healthy for you or not. And again, I can help you process that. So what I want you to think about on this is in the idea of compromise. And I'm going specifically under a marriage at this point, or a separation, or a divorce. The ability to communicate. Now, in a divorce situation where there are no children involved, there is no rule that says you have to remain in contact with that spouse once the marriage is over. You may find that in some cases you're better friends than you were spouses, and in which case that's a different dynamic. When there's children involved, communication is pivotal, important. Just it has to happen and it has to be positive. And you have to be able to weed out your emotional attachments in order to do what's best for the children. And in my other career in education, I have seen situations where parents can't even be in the same room together because they are so toxic to each other that they're going to fight. The sad thing is when the child is sitting right there listening to their parents, it's not a good situation. And to be very fair and honest, if you're going to engage in a relationship and have children, and then the marriage fails, you have to be willing, the two of you have to be willing to put your anger aside to do what's right for the child. And if you cannot do that, you need help. I'm going to be very frank and honest. I have seen the looks of children who have sat in these meetings while their parents are going at each other. And that child is sitting there watching it. Now, number one, you're teaching them that it's okay to disrespect somebody. You are teaching them that you don't have to treat a spouse, former spouse, with respect. You're also showing that child that you can't trust relationships. That's what you're doing. So you and your spouse have got to find a common ground. And I guarantee you, you can't do that alone. So if you need help on that, please let me know. I will be happy to work with you and your former spouse. So what I'm talking about here too is the idea to understand as a human being what you are willing to sacrifice. Now, when you're in love and everything's great, it's hard to think about, but wait, there's going to be a hard time. There's going to be difficulties. Oh, no. It can't happen because I love them. Well, guess what? Difficulties happen. Yes, my friends, difficulties happen. People will not always agree. Those disagreements occur. What do you do in those disagreements? Because you should never feel like you are sacrificing. Okay? And sacrificing is a kind of a two-way word in the sense that you can sacrifice to some extent. You can sacrifice for the moment. And there's nothing wrong with sacrificing for the moment. There is nothing wrong with that. Now, if you are sacrificing all the time, that's a problem. Because when you begin to do that and you are the only one sacrificing, you will gain resentment. When you have resentment that you don't deal with, it becomes toxic. When you have toxicity, you have a breakdown. When you have a breakdown, the marriage fails. Okay, so it is important to understand within yourself, what are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to be able to negotiate in order to keep a harmonious marriage? Now, will it always be perfect? No. And in this sense, you also have to think about how that sacrifice can play out through all aspects of your life. You are the one who is always coming forward to apologize. Even if you really didn't do anything wrong, that's a problem. If you have relationships where someone doesn't get their way and then they treat you with the hostility, and in order for you to gain back the friendship, you're apologizing, but you haven't done anything wrong, then that's a problem. That's being too accommodating to somebody who doesn't deserve you. So there's a lot going on in all of this. Again, this is a very hard topic to go through, and it's not always easy. And you have to be willing to do what it takes for your own peace of mind, for your own center of balance. And that's the whole point. Understanding your balance, understanding your center is the one way that you are going to be able to retain and create relationships that are really, truly meaningful. So take that all in. Let me know what you think. If you have any questions or comments, you can email me. I've had some emails, so I'm appreciative of those, and I've answered those. If you have any comments, please leave them in the bottom down below. I'll put some links into my practice. And I hope that you have a good day, a great week. And remember to be kind to yourself, to others, but don't sacrifice. Be true to yourself, because in doing so, you're being truthful to others. Take care. This is Dr. Stacey Betancourt with Making Sense with Dr. Stacey.